Welcome to the Infuse Compassion podcast, hosted by me, Amy Quisenberry.
And me, Mark Carpenter.
We are on a mission to make this world a kinder place for us all by bringing healthier human connection to communities, families, and organizations of all types and sizes.
Our goal is to create stronger relationships, more inspired teams, increased trust, and improved results.
So let's get started with more ways to infuse compassion into our world. Welcome back, Compassionators, to another episode of the Infuse Compassion podcast. Listen, we just finished a really powerful and dynamic and unfolding conversation with Sara Schairer. She is the founder and creator of the Compassionate concept, bracelets. She's just a compassion powerhouse. And I have so much that I want to share, but I'm going to turn it over to my partner, Mark. Mark, come on. What is going? There was so much that we wanted to say. And A+ for restraint on both of our sides for not like, oh, Sara, I know we had so much to share. So let me turn it over to you. What are some of the things that you just have to talk about here?
Yeah, this is dangerous, Amy. You're turning it over to me because I have so many things on my mind right now that you may never get any time back. But I'm just going to follow up what you just said. We had like a 20-minute conversation with Sara after we stopped the recording. It just had so many great little points in it that it was. Amy at one point said we should have just kept the recording going and recorded a lot of this conversation too. There was just so much. So if you haven't listened to the previous episode with Sara Schairer, please listen to that. She has so many great things to say. Some of the points that jumped out to me were the impact of systems on the way that we show up compassionately. This point that I think human beings are born with an innate compassion. And we get that driven out of us by a lot of the systems that are around us and the structures that we have in our lives. And so that was one of the points that really resonated with me because I see it. I see it in the way that we do work. I see it in the way that we do schools. And it's a struggle. And I'd love to get input from our listeners on how we can change our systems to help us to be more compassionate, to help us bring out that innate compassion that we have. So as we're listening through, I'm going to put this as a challenge out to our compassionators, our listeners here, to be thinking in this discussion about what are some simple steps we can take to help change some of those systems and really make them more driving toward compassion. So with that, I'm going to throw it back to you, Amy, because I want you to talk about the program that you went through with Sara around compassion and about having more compassion in our lives.
Yeah. So there is a course at UCSD. It's virtual, so you don't need to be in San Diego to be a part of it. And it is Cultivating Compassion. That's the name of the course. And it was absolutely powerful from like a mind opening. One is to really gain the understanding of suffering. And Sara puts it so eloquently and so clearly in the podcast she was on. But when she first started, because I actually met Sara, we have a mutual friend who, when our mutual friend learned that compassion is like my passion, she said, you have to meet my friend Sara. She's the one who created the compassion bracelets. And I said, oh my gosh, I saw her TED Talk. She's amazing. She's here in San Diego. Are you kidding me? The three of us went to lunch. It was amazing. So Sara says to me that she talks about that. She talks about the suffering component of compassion. Like, anybody that's suffering is a candidate for compassion. And I thought, but I'm not suffering. I'm not suffering. And it made me step back from compassion for just a moment and go, wait a second. And then as I dove into it more, it's much simpler than that. I was overcomplicating, thinking I needed to be in trauma. But she simplifies it by saying, you it's when you're in a state of you want something that you don't have, or you have something that you don't want.
Yeah.
How many of us are in the are that's the reality? Many times on any given day, right? So there's that component, but I want to share one more thing. And
But
then,
before we go off that one, Amy, can I just add to that?
yeah.
Because I love the distinction you just made between suffering and trauma. That we
Mm,
often think trauma is what we mean by suffering. But I
yeah.
love that definition that she gave, that suffering is really anytime there's a disconnect between where you are and where you want to be,
Yeah.
what you have and or what you have that you want to be rid of, or what you have but don't have.
Yeah.
And that makes everyone a candidate for receiving compassion,
That's right.
because everyone is in a situation probably where they're suffering at some level. And so I just love that mentality of everyone is a candidate for our compassion.
Yeah. Another thing that they talked about, that they taught us in this course, which just made my mind explode from a really great way. In San Diego, most big cities, there's traffic. Traffic is a way of life. And I've always had this phrase of, I'm stuck in traffic. It's common. Most people say, I'm stuck in traffic. And Burrell Poe, the instructor, says, you're not stuck in traffic. You are traffic. You are traffic. I was separating myself, looking around. Oh, I'm in all this traffic. Hey, hey, you're a part of it. You're a part of this, right? You're a part of this human condition. It's not happening to you. You're a part of it.
Yeah.
And that was such a powerful awareness. It really, I didn't even realize I was in a victim stance in it. But if I come at it from I'm in traffic, then I'm literally, my psychology in it is I'm a victim of my circumstance. That's not the case. I'm contributing to traffic, right? And so I loved that. There's another piece, but I want to give you an opportunity to get in this if you had anything to add, Mark.
Yeah, and just that idea that self-compassion is part of self-compassion is building a community of compassion around you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think the step that you just talked about there, recognizing that I am part of the experience that I'm having. I have created some of the experience that I'm having. It's not all happening to me, and that's it's an empowering statement. I don't want anybody to think of that as, oh, okay, so now you're blaming the victim. No, that's not it. It's there are parts that I can own. What can I own in this and contribute to my own compassion, but also by building a community of compassion around me?
And this, I'm glad you took it here because the community, this is a big
Yeah.
piece of the self compassion. So much of the work that Sarah does, the work that I do, is about self compassion. Foundational component, self compassion. You can't give what you don't have, right? And when she talked about the community, she spoke about that she heard somebody say this on a podcast, social media, somewhere. She doesn't remember. I don't know who said it, but I've heard this as well. And it's that oxygen mask statement
Yeah.
that, for so long we've used the oxygen mask. Put your oxygen mask on before you put anybody else's on. And in this phrase, this statement that she heard somebody say was, why do you have to be the one to put your oxygen mask on? Maybe imagine having a community of compassionate people that support and love you and that are there to put your mask on while you're putting your loved one's mask on, right? Imagine that. And that really struck me because I was reminded of a story that I'd love to share. And I just took Mark's storytelling master storytelling course. So we'll see. We'll see how I do, Mark.
This
We'll
is your
see.
test.
This is my test. We'll see how I do. Okay. So my husband and I are hanging out at the house. I don't know what day it is. I have no idea. But I'm home. He's home. It's probably a Saturday or something. And he's not feeling well. He hasn't been feeling well for a bit. This was like 4 years ago. He wasn't feeling well. And he said, I'm going to take a nap. I said, great. He goes, my phone's on the patio. I'm going to go get it. And then I'm going to come in and take a nap. I said, great. I go in the other room. I come back. He's on the kitchen floor. Knees underneath him, completely like unconscious. I've never been in a situation like this before in my life. I'm standing over him. I'm holding his hand in my head, and I've got on the phone 911. Something happened to my husband. He is unconscious. I need the ambulance here right now. Okay. So while the ambulance is coming, he comes to, and the fire department is like 3 blocks away. These people are angels. They are here in no time at all. They come into the house. Then the ambulance comes. They're shaving his chest to put the things on, and they were able to get him to come to, so they didn't have to do any of the compression stuff. But because his blood pressure had dropped so low.
Wow.
So he sees me. He's awake. He's aware. He sees me walking around the house, gathering things, because I don't know when I'm coming back. So I've got to get the stuff ready for our dogs. I don't know who's going to take over. I don't know who, but I know I'm not leaving my husband. I know I'm going with him, right? In the door walks Annette, who lives, it's amazing. She lives catty corner from us. She has a key to our house. A few minutes later, Jean, who lives down the street, 2 of my best friends, they come walking in, and they said, don't worry, we've got it. He told me later, afterward, he said, well, how are you so calm? And I said, because I knew the medical professionals were taking care of you, and I knew Jean and Annette were going to take care of the dogs. So I was able to focus on what do I need to get under control so that I can be a support for him and have everything that we need. It was the community. It was the medical professionals. It was the person on the phone. It was our neighbors, this community that just made this incredibly traumatic experience. I was able to stay calm because everybody did exactly what I needed them to do, and I didn't ask a person to do a thing.
Yeah.
That's community. Yeah. That's community.
And it's such a classic example, going back to using that analogy of everybody's bringing their oxygen. Everybody's bringing their oxygen to help each other. All analogies fall apart at some point, but I keep expanding them out. I just keep thinking, the more community that you have, the more oxygen there is for everybody. Mm. And so there's no shortage. There's no feeling of, well, I got to keep my own oxygen mask on because, hey, if we run out of oxygen, I got to make sure I have mine. It's, let's just all share our oxygen with each other.
That's right.
And we're all going to be better for it. There was a great statement that Sara made in the podcast, that's the previous episode, where she said, when I prioritize compassion, everything else in my life goes better. Mm. I thought, what a great statement to remember. If we're looking at why should I show more compassion? Why should I prioritize compassion in my life? It is because everything else goes better. Yeah. And so I love that idea of community, and that building a community of compassion is a large part of the self-compassion we have. The other part I loved about your story, Amy, is you were able to focus on what was really important. Mm-hmm. Because you knew the compassion that other people were providing around you allowed other items to be taken care of. You didn't have to focus on all those other details. You could focus on your husband. You could focus on being there and being present, because compassion saved the day with all the other aspects that you had to worry about.
That's right. That's right. Everybody, people were literally putting oxygen masks on for both of us. That's exactly what happened. You know, we were fully supported by these amazing people in our lives. It was interesting. Shortly after, we saw, um, I don't know if it was this fire crew, but we saw a fire crew at the grocery store. That's typically, unless they're coming to your house, that's typically where you're going to see the fire department, right? And we stopped and we went up to them and we just thanked them for what they do. And I started crying and I was like, you need to understand, like, you saved my husband's life. Like, I can't imagine, like, he's my person. I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine. And we asked them if we could buy their groceries, and they said no, it's all right.
Well, and they saved your husband's life, but they saved your life too.
Yeah.
And they saved your stress level in that moment by closing that compassion gap that you needed there.
Yeah. Well, and I want to give also the ambulance.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I'm telling you, these people just came in and took control, and they were like, boom, 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 boom. It was, I've never seen anything like that before. Amazing. First responders, thank you. Thank you for everything you do, first responders.
And we say that sometimes, and I think broadly we don't give enough of that credit for not just the technical work that they do, but the compassion that they show in the process, the humanity that they bring into that work too. And I love it. I love the call out for them. You know, one of the other things that Sara talked about that struck me was the systems that we have in place that actually maybe drive compassion away from us a little bit. She talked about how I think we as human beings are born compassionate. We have compassion innately in us as a species that is required to live in community. We can't survive on our own. We're not like in other parts of the animal kingdom. The animal's born, and within hours or days, they're on their own and they're able to function. No, we can't do that. We have to have community with us. And so that's part of what breeds compassion into our beings. But a lot of the systems that we're faced with at work and at school drive those out. I'd love to get your thoughts around that idea of systems and changing systems more to help us to keep that compassion that we innately have as human beings.
Yeah. You know, I'm gonna connect it to a system that I'm passionate about. There's a lot of systems that I'm passionate about, but for those people who know me, I've been a vegan coming on, I think July is going to be either 8 or 9 years. And I became a vegan because of the cruelty to the animals that happen. And I did, when I was getting my master's, I did a very in depth research paper on factory farming. And it's, when I think of the systems of how many animals are processed through the system to feed the people, imagine if we all made a conscious decision to eat a little less animal products. We could take some pressure off of the system. Period. I just want to put that thought out and imagine if we applied that to other environments. What can we do to ease the pressure off of the system? What changes can we make to, because systems happen, they become these big machines because there's this sometimes need, illusion of need. He spoke about teaching to the test.
Yeah.
How about teaching to help create a healthy well-balanced human being. How about that?
Yeah. And I love that point, particularly around, school systems, that we put this value on. You've got to learn this stuff so that you can go out and make money, so that you can contribute to society by producing income, by having money. Now, I'm not going to diminish that. I like having an income. I like being able to provide for myself. I like having a roof over my head. But it almost sets it up as you can either provide an income or you can be a good person. And it's a false dichotomy. I really believe that if we teach people, the way you treat people in the work environment actually produces an opportunity for everyone to succeed more. I think that would create a system where we have more compassion in the workplace. Amy and I were talking a little earlier about this title of human resources, and how even sometimes the title we put, and she brought up the title, sometimes it's called human capital. And it's focusing on people as a resource or as a component of capital. I was talking to somebody just yesterday about this, and they said, yeah, I'm seeing some movement in companies away from those types of title, so that it's not a chief human resources officer anymore. It's a chief people officer, or I'm a people supervisor, but it's focused on people. And I think that that's a shift that we can make within the systems of business that gets us more thinking about, how can I be more compassionate? How can I treat people more like people? With the idea that that actually is going to lead to better, more sustainable results within organizations.
And this is huge. This kind of brings us to the whole. We've talked about it on this podcast. On this podcast, we talked about it on the episode with Sarah. This illusion that compassion is soft.
Yeah.
And when we think about applying compassionate in a work environment, or even I'm going to say the phrase that you're going to be like, I wanted to say that. Hard back, soft front.
Yep.
What?
Compassionate people have a hard back and a soft front.
Yes. And it's that when we think about compassion, it's setting clear boundaries. Yeah. It's setting clear expectations. Earlier, in an earlier episode, we speak about compassionate communication. And I actually have a couple of listeners that have followed up with me, and they're like, there are difficult conversations that I've been trying to have for a really long time. And it wasn't until I listened to your podcast that I was able to get what I needed to have those conversations. And oh my goodness, what I've been able to release, the stress, the tension, the frustration. I thank you so much. And it's like, oh, thank you. But I want to go back to the human resources department, human capital department. I think sometimes we can get caught up in the day-to-day deliverables that need to be done. And sometimes maybe there's a loss of, but why am I here? Regardless of what we're going to call ourselves, HR, human capital, whatever. Why am I really here? I'm here to support and understand the employees, to support and understand the organization. It's a balance. You have to do both. And you can do both successfully. But part of it is these systems that you're designing, and I'm talking about an actual like HRMS, a human resource management system.
Yeah.
When you're designing that, are you keeping the end user's experience in mind? As you're even selecting your system, how user-friendly is that? How intuitive is that? It's little things like that that can bring humanity into the workplace. If we're really thinking about the impact, I'm going to roll out this policy. Okay, but are we really thinking about our employees and the impact to them as we're creating this policy? So
I'd even take that one step further to not only say, what's the user experience for them, but how will it benefit them in the end? Why is it good for them to have this system? What's it going to benefit? What benefit is it going to be to these people, and serving their needs? As we're talking about community, and again, I'd love to hear from our listeners some ideas around how have you, or how do you think we could change some of these systems to build more compassionate communities that we work in, that we teach in, that we go to school in. But I'd also like to bring up a little side subject here before we run out of time. And Amy, you had an experience recently where a compassionate community really came together for some good. And I would just like to brag on Amy for just a little bit that she has been part of a project. They just launched a best-selling book that Amy has contributed to. And I want Amy to have a chance to talk about that work and that experience.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, this just happened. So even though this podcast is going to be aired later, just this week, Brave Women at Work, Lessons in Letting Go. That's the name of the book. There's 9 authors that came together with the help of Hope Mueller and Jennifer, I never say her name right, Pestikas, Pestikas. I think that's how it is. We're bestsellers because of our community. I'm telling you, these people showed up. Each one of us authors, Hope and Jen, we were all digging deep in our network and asking people, hey, will you help us? We wanted one category, Mark. We just wanted one. We got 9. 9. We made bestseller in 9 categories. That's the community. These people, our friends, our family, our network, they showed up, and oh, the gratitude. Let me just speak for Hope, Jen, and every author. The gratitude, the gratitude, the gratitude. Thank you so much. Not just for us, but also because, again, think about the name of this book, Lessons in Letting Go. When we talk about being more compassionate, what do we need to let go of? What are some of the things that we say to ourselves that aren't helpful? What are some of the things that we're doing that aren't helpful? What do we need to let go of so that we can have more compassion in our lives?
And what can we hold on to if we
Ooh.
let go of some of those things?
Oh yeah.
That's the other side of that. It's not just about, I'm going to just let go of all this stuff, but now what can I hold on to? What can I reach out to?
And what don't you have room for because you've got all this other stuff? And now you can make room for the goodness to come in.
Yeah.
So, Mark, you were part of my community. You helped to make that happen. So, big thank you to everybody that was a part of it. And, so the electronic version is available now, Amazon to get it. And then the hard copy will be available in June. So, thank you for that.
So probably after or before this episode's released, actually, as it turns out. So if you don't have it yet, go get it. Brave Women at Work, Lessons in Letting Go. Now, one other point that we want to make before we jump off today, and we are at the end of our self-imposed deadline here, but we are launching our 2nd annual Infuse Compassion into Companies conference that will be in November of 2025. And so go to the infusecompassion.com website and take a look at that. Consider joining us for that conference. Consider sponsoring that conference. We know you're compassionators. We know this is something that's important to you. We're going to bring together people that are going to help with some of that systems thinking that we've been thinking about. How can we infuse more compassion into companies so that we individually and organizationally and worldwide, globally, just from a community standpoint, how can we have more compassion? And how can we all benefit from that? You will likely see some of the speakers pulled from some of our guests that we've had here in the podcast. We've got applications out currently for those speakers. By the time this episode airs, I think those speakers will be firmed up. And so take a look at the lineup, and we'd love to have you join us for the ICIC 25, Infuse Compassion into Companies 2025.
Perfect. That was great. 2 great plugs, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Infuse Compassion podcast. If you enjoyed the conversation, please share a review and like the podcast so other compassionators can join us. Until next time, let's all do something each day to infuse compassion into the world. For more information on our guests, see the show notes. For more information on Mark and Amy, go to infusecompassion.com.